Hey everyone, hi, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be discussing some impeccably illustrated children's picture books. If you're new here, then you should know that my name is Shelly. I really love books and reading, and one of my specialties is illustrated picture books for children. So if you're watching as an unsubscribed person, I would encourage you to subscribe, stick around, and without any further rambling on, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. Over a year ago, I made a video entitled The 10 Picture Books You Must See Before You Die. And in that video, I got so many wonderful comments of people sharing their favorite illustrated picture books. And that's what this video is. It's a little bit of a follow-up, but it's picture books that you all have suggested were the most beautiful, the books that one should see before they die. So I have 10 illustrators here. They're all different, and I'm going to go in order of least commented to most commented. There are maybe 2 to 3 that I have seen over and over and over that people have wanted me to include in videos that you all think is an incredible illustrator. And I'm gonna end with the number 1, like the person that people have commented about the most. So let's go ahead and jump in. So rather than recapping the stories, I'm gonna be focusing on why are these illustrations the favorites among others. I'm going to be focusing on that question and maybe trying to deconstruct that rather than giving you a recap of all of the stories, because that's what we're here for. We're here for illustrations. Our first book is While You Were Sleeping by Mariana Ruiz Johnson, and I love the choice of colors, not characters. Well, I also really like her characters. But look at these end papers, these patterns, like this pattern of stars and this pattern on the bed sheet or on the quilt, and the bright yellow for the hair. Immediately, I'm also noticing like the detail to patterns. So this curtain and the wallpaper. She also has these like bold eyes, just making it a standout feature in her characters' faces. My eye is drawn to the eyes of her characters. So even here, you know, it's this bold eye. I'll show you close up. It's the bold eye on this bird, the eyes on the cat, the eyes on this mouse, or the eye on this mouse. It's the opposite of beady eyes. It's like these bold, gorgeous, beautiful eyes that you just want to look at, and they look straight back at you. Most of her characters sit in profile. On this page of quite a few characters, only a couple are looking straight back at us with their full face. So this little character is showing her full face. Our sleeping person, this character, this little baby, but most of the people or birds are mostly in profile. Her choice of colors are just stunning as well. The orange, the teal, the deep blue. Look how pretty that is. Oh my goodness. So pretty. Oh, and I didn't notice this before, but all of her animal characters have these adorable outfits. Look at that. And the yellows and reds, just gorgeous. Beautiful, bright, bold. She drew these eyes of her birds with little dots for eyes. Oh, and then they get big eyes when you get closer up to them. And the rosy cheeks. How cute. Oh, and then our little person has a fish vest or pajamas on that match the fish on earlier pages. And a different end paper. So this is like the day end paper. And this is the night end paper. That's a clever detail. She lives in Buenos Aires, Argentina with her husband and son. Very, very cool. I can see why this is a favorite, why she is a favorite of so many commenters. One person in particular talked about this book, and this is Tea Party in the Woods by Akiko Miyakoshi, and I can see why somebody loved this book so much. Immediately we're getting a very strong artistic point of view. Mostly it's black and white, with just a couple of pops of color, and even those pops are limited. There's this yellow and the red of her hat and gloves. Ooh, look at these end papers. So beautiful. I love that you can see the texture of the canvas. You can see the texture of her paper or canvas in the strokes that she does to these wooded areas, but you can see it all throughout the book as well. I really love texture in books, when you can see the texture of the artistic implement on the paper. I like that aspect, and I can see that in these pages. Oh. I like this. I like this because you have all these faces. These beautiful faces looking back at you. It's like we are the little girl standing in the book. That is gorgeous. I'm loving the limited color palette of just these pops of red and yellow. Oh, it's almost like a little treat when you turn the page and there's like more color popping off than the previous pages. You can also see like the watermark of the water imprints that it's left as she painted the canvas. We go from this little girl walking in the woods alone to all of these friends now walking the woods with her in the fullness of it. Beautiful, just beautiful. I can see why her work is, well loved and why it was suggested. This author, this illustrator, lives in Tokyo, Japan. This book is super busted up. This is Best Word Book Ever by Richard Scarry, or it's actually called Richard Scarry's Best Word Book Ever. And this book has been so well loved. If you can see, everything is falling apart. Actually, the center, one could take these center pages out and the spine is broken. I'm sure I could do like a project where I can put this book back together. I've seen it done before and I could probably do it. But when someone commented this, it put a smile on my face because my kids have looked at this book, read this book over and over and over. And it's really just daily things, and Richard Scarry has labeled them. And all of his people, like all of the characters, are animals. It's also a relic of a previous time because toys, this is harkening back to like a different time period with the toys mentioned here, or you see it in other places as well. Like this is definitely from a different time period. Artistically, it is simple and it works. You can see that there's some sort of probably watercolor and ink because you see some of the bleeding of the watercolor on each of the pages. I remember looking at this when I was a kid as well. Even though this reminds me of a different time period than 2024, so much of this is still so relevant and applicable. My gosh, these pages have been so well worn. These pages have gotten ripped. This book is falling apart. I just can't help but smile looking at this. Just reminds me of my kids, of my own childhood. I'm so glad somebody had suggested this. Dr. Seuss has been mentioned at least once. I don't get a ton of comments about Dr. Seuss. His illustrations are distinct, and I can appreciate them for their distinctness. However, I don't love Dr. Seuss's illustrations. Maybe I'll like it more as I'm flipping through here. I do love the limited color palette. Look at these silly little characters. Don't get me wrong though, I love his quirky writing, his silly writing, like the Cuckoo's Bananas Crazy, like storyline of what he writes. The Grinch is absolutely iconic. Green Eggs and Ham is absolutely iconic. Okay, I really do like this machine here. Like, it's just so random. Oh. Ooh, look at that. The colors. This also probably has a bit to do with the colors chosen, probably has something to do with what was how things were printed back then, though I don't know that much about the printing industry or how that worked, but I wonder if they only had certain colors that he could use, or only so many colors that could be included in each book. That is very possible. And I'm sure some of you probably know more about that process than I do. These bold pages, just blue, gorgeous blue. So beautiful. I will say that like the characters that he creates, they're just memorable, and it's consistent throughout his books. And also like the way he draws plants is consistent. So it's like, it's very memorable, especially with someone who has such a huge back catalog. These like bold drawings. Yeah, I can see why people love him. Maybe I'll take back what I said. Him not being a favorite. I just never really thought about it. That was fun. The absolute king of texture is Eric Carle. I can absolutely understand why people love his work. I mean, you see the paint strokes, and just also in a lot of ways what many of these illustrators have is a very specific artistic point of view. They're producing art that is recognizably theirs. And as someone, I've done a little bit of art here and there, and none of my art feels like it's recognizably mine, so it is a feat. You see these splotches on the page, and the bold choice in color, the beautiful use of the white space around. Of course, Eric Carle is most known for The Very Hungry Caterpillar and other stories. We have several of his books. This one was just the most readily available. Yeah, it's so cool. Now we're getting into illustrators that several people have spoken to me or left comments about, and Shaun Tan is one of them. His name is mentioned over and over and over again, and you can see why. I love Shaun Tan. When I did my video, I just didn't think to include him, which was an egregious oversight. Again, you can see the texture of the strokes of the pencil. I mean, now you could, photograph them or scan in these pictures and smooth out any of the texture on the computer if you wanted. But I love when we keep that in. It gives it just a magic. This is a wordless picture book, and I read it several years ago. It's been a while since I've reread it or re-looked at it, reconsumed it. It's beautiful. His use of space is fantastic. And even though we have this essentially grayscale, some of the blocks are more yellow toned. So they have this like yellow undertone. This has more of a peach undertone. These are more of a blue undertone. And then you have a truly neutral gray over here. So it's fascinating, these little details that these illustrators think of. The colors go back and forth between black and white and like a sepia tone. So brilliant. Impeccable work, just impeccable. So brilliantly done. Another absolute icon is Kate Greenaway's Mother Goose. I absolutely think this cover is poorly printed. The main character looks like she's cross-eyed, and if you flip to her, let me find it. If you flip to, it's just poor printing. The person on the cover, I forget where it is, but it's so, oh, here it is. She's not cross-eyed. She is just standing there looking beautiful and lovely, and I just think that this cover printing was just so poorly done, but that's all right. Now, I have actually done my own like versions or tried to reproduce some of Kate Greenaway's illustrations. I find them so incredibly precious. And there are little rhymes underneath. Just stunning. I love this one. Mary, Mary, quite contrary. How does your garden grow? I love it. That's one of my favorites. And this little boy standing there, oh, he's so cute. Look at that. That face is precious. This one is also one of my favorites, Humpty Dumpty. Just the way that the child is sitting on the wall, just how precious the colors, the tree in the background. So beautiful. Yeah, that I can see is just so good, so precious. Another commenter favorite is Beatrix Potter, all of Beatrix Potter's works. And each of these illustrators, you know, from Richard Scarry to Beatrix Potter to Kate Greenaway and even Eric Carle and Dr. Seuss, all of these illustrators, it harkens to their time period, the way that art could be reprinted, and the way the constraints and confinements of the time. I think part of Beatrix Potter's appeal are the dressed up little characters. Like, that's so stinking precious. Like, look at this. A bunny in a waistcoat and little overcoat or like smoking jacket. And like the choice of these beautiful washes of green to color the garden. And, you know, she was a lovely writer to boot. So yeah, I can see why. They're just so good, so beautiful. Okay, a new to me illustrator that I had never heard of until I got a flood of comments about this illustrator. And I was like, okay, I'm going to look up her books. And one of them, well, this one in particular that I didn't know of, was Tasha Tutor. Another person that is really indicative of her time. Let's see when she was producing books. Let me line this up straight. So Tasha Tutor's Bedtime Story. So this is printed in 1977. And I mean, it looks like a book that would come out in the 1970s. Wow, just stunning. And the tale is not lengthy, but it's more words on a page than you see for children's books, nowadays. And so she's illustrating and writing condensed versions of classic fairy tales. Snow White. The amount of detail on this page is just phenomenal. And finally, the illustrator that has commented on my channel the most for being people's favorites is none other than Jan Brett. I have gotten this is the Mermaid, but people love Jan Brett. I have read some of her books as a child. I have yet to really rediscover her as an adult, and I'm sure there are people thinking, well, what are you waiting for? And so I had gotten this book partly for this video, but partly because I wanted to rediscover Jan Brett. And the amount of detail in every page is just stunning. She's got this texture, like you can see the texture of the rocks, and she does this inlay, like where the page is framed up even within the pages of the book. Everything looks both it has an artistic point of view, but it has a realism in some ways. Like her hands are just so well done and so well detailed, and her face and the tones of her face, it has a lot of dimension. Again, the attention to detail is utterly gorgeous, and the colors, it's like this muted rainbow. It's so pretty. Immensely creative too, like this shell cradle for a bed. Just again, the detail, all of the waves of the shell, and the texture of her lips, and the way that her eyelashes are framed up. I mean, it's so pretty. Amazing. So I can definitely see why people love Jan Brett. I'm gonna have to explore her work more. I mean, look at these end papers. I can see why she is a commenter or a reader's favorite, truly. I can definitely see that. All right, well, that's it for me. Thank you so much for letting me share these incredible picture books with you. I really appreciate your time, and I hope to see you all in my next one. Bye.